Right. So hopefully all of you can see the slide up on your screens. I really just wanted to take the opportunity to say it's great to have so many of you here today, because it's actually a very big turnout. I wasn't anticipating so many of you, which is fantastic. And I just, in terms of myself, for those of you who haven't met me, I joined Cooperative Business New Zealand a couple of years ago. So I see the challenges firsthand that your businesses face and also the opportunities that they provide. And it's really neat to hear you talking about bringing together the individuals and groups to operate these successful businesses. So, and ultimately, from what I hear from all of you, it's about benefiting your communities as well. So that's exactly what these businesses are all about. And I guess right now, with us facing such a period of unprecedented change, it's really allowing New Zealand to navigate this period, and you're going to be a significant player in that. So I think that's an exciting time. And I just mentioned earlier, in terms of, we do have limited time and there's a large number, so we'll try and stick to the agenda. And for those of you who weren't party to my earlier comment, we've actually got David Joslin from the company's office joining us today. He's with MB, and so we're working with them in terms of the startup guide, co-op startup guide. Just to give you a bit of background, Co-op Business NZ was founded in the 80s, actually originally for the agri sector, and then in the 90s. Kelsey, can you let that person in, please?
Yep, have done.
In the 90s, we expanded the business, recognising that there was a multitude of businesses leveraging the model. And so we subsequently rebranded in 2014, which is where we've become Cooperative Business New Zealand. We are the only body that represents New Zealand's member-owned businesses, but we do work in a similar way to other agencies such as Business New Zealand, Hort New Zealand, Federated Farmers, etc. So the thing that differentiates us is we don't get any external funding, so we're solely reliant upon member funding. In terms of this range of services that we offer you, it's pretty broad, and we do this in support working with partners. So we actually partner with the International Cooperative Alliance, and they provide links through to our International Co-op network, and along with the United Nations, the World Trading Organization, and then the International Labour Organization. So just be mindful, if those are organisations that you want to reach out to or get specific information, that's something that we can work with you on. We're also an affiliated member with Business New Zealand, and that's been hugely beneficial in terms of engaging with Wellington. So again, leverage those relationships as much as you like. I guess the other thing that's really important for your organisations is making sure that you've got good senior leaders and governors directing the business. And so we are doing some work also with the IOD, which is the Institute of Directors. So that's also critical for yourselves, recognising that you are setting up businesses, so they need to be run effectively. So part of the work that we do is obviously working with organisations such as yourself looking to establish these co-op businesses. And what's been really interesting is we've seen a significant ramp up over COVID. And we are proactively looking at opportunities where the business model can be applied in terms of improving the lives and livelihoods of New Zealanders. And in particular, we're doing quite a lot of work around Māori and Pacifica in that space. I also work quite closely with other APEC nations. So for us in particular, that's Australia, that's Canada, the USA, and the UK. So they run very similar co-op businesses to ourselves. And specifically the areas that we're looking at right now is around housing, healthcare, infrastructure, so that those are all opportunities. The other areas that we do is a lot of support with collaboration across our members, and we're constantly working in terms of identifying opportunities around education. So we do a lot of work to upskill, and it's not just about yourselves, but it's actually looking more broadly in terms of tertiary and secondary school education. And finally, we do a lot of celebrating of our members' successes. So we have the Co-op Business Awards, and we're looking at hosting that in conjunction with Fonterra while they celebrate their 150th. I thought you might just like to see the logos of all of those organisations that currently utilise, or it's not all actually, it's a small snapshot of organisations that use the co-op business model. And you'll see here that it's very broad. And so a lot of people are unaware of these businesses being cooperatives. They quite often think of them as being corporates or franchises. And so there's a lot of education that I do in terms of making sure that people actually do recognise that actually they've got different drivers that they operate under. For myself personally and the team, we feel a real privilege to actually be representing the majority of these businesses. And I guess for all of you looking at these brands out that you're looking at right now, it's like, well, how does that, how does that equate to what I'm trying to do? Just recognise that all of them also started out as small seeds. So it's not unrealistic to think that you could actually achieve the same sorts of aspirations. So the other thing that I think is really important that always is front of mind when you're establishing these businesses is thinking about the Rochdale Principles. And whether you're sitting here in New Zealand or in any other country looking to establish a cooperative, these principles are what makes you a cooperative, and they need to be always a primary. So it's really important that your senior leaders are actually focusing on these principles. And it's not about maximising profit for today and tomorrow, it's about focusing on your members' needs. And what we see is that as a result of the business construct, you're far more likely to be successful and resilient where other businesses potentially fail. I just put the slide up because I think it's quite unique for you to actually see that you're part of a much larger cohort internationally. Cooperatives generate about US 3 trillion in annual revenues, and they equate to about the 5th largest economy globally. So that's behind USA, China, Japan, and Germany. So it's really a huge player. They have about 1.2 billion members located across 145 countries. Here in New Zealand, we've got 1.5 billion members cooperatives. So, sorry, 1.5 million members. So it is really significant. Internationally, they employ 280 million people. That's about 1/10 of the world's working population. Here in New Zealand, the cooperatives themselves employ about just under 50,000 people. But then in terms of the actual members, that's a whole nother layer that we don't have visibility of. Your businesses provide core infrastructure services for society, and you often evolve, as I said, to become highly successful businesses. So these are all things to always have in the back of your mind, that you're part of a much bigger cohort, and there's lots of learnings that we can tap into in terms of other businesses that are also looking to establish similar organisations to what you're doing. I just put the slide up here really just to say that, there's lots of opportunities presented by the business model, and the key really is making sure that you appeal to the minds and hearts of your members and gain their commitment. I'm sure you're already on that journey, and it's wonderful to see many of them go on to be highly successful, making such a big impact in terms of the lives and livelihoods of their members. I know that this is very dear to Paul's heart, B Corp certification. This is on the rise internationally. For those of you who haven't heard about B Corp certification, it's basically about being good corporate citizens. And most businesses now are looking to align themselves to make sure that they can show that they are emulating those. As a cooperative, you are automatically given the principles that you operate under, operating with those front of mind. The other thing on the right is I've just put up there in terms of the different co-op structures that you can be set up under. And so it really does just show the versatility of the model. This slide here is really just to say, there's all these events and forums and training available to you as members of Cooperative Business New Zealand. So please do make sure that you reach out to us and participate. We do offer member discounts, and I'm very mindful that you're in startup phase. So don't be shy to speak to me if there's something that you want to be involved in. So I just want to get cracking with the introductions because I'm mindful of time. So if we can go around, and hopefully there's just one of you from each business that can speak to the work that you're doing. So just thought if you want to introduce yourself, provide your name, what the industry is that you're looking at setting up under, who are your members? Are they suppliers, customers, or employees, or businesses in their own right? The legislation, if you do know it, and where you are in your journey in terms of your maturity, and if there's one key issue that you'd like us to address today. So I'm just see if I can stop that sharing. If we stop sharing, is that you're back to, no, you can still see that. I'll just stop that sharing. Right. Okay, so I'm just looking around the room. We'll start with Lindsay, seeing as Lindsay's very kindly offered to provide a bit of a teaser for us in terms of the case study.
Okay, I'm not sure if I offered, but I'm doing it anyway. So I'm Lindsay. I am the Executive Officer and Corporate Counsel of the New Zealand Truffle Association, which is a very small organisation. I have grand titles. I was asked to set up a truffle co-op to assist the producers to sell. The truffle industry in New Zealand's about 30 to 40 years old, but they so far haven't really got off the ground. So I'm supposed to try and kickstart that. Our co-op journey started about 2.5 months ago, I guess. We got a group together, and I'm just looking after that. So whatever I tell you today is on the basis of 10 weeks experience, so don't rely on it too much.
Okay, we'll hand over to Paul.
Yeah, hi. We're putting together a bookkeeping cooperative, which is on hold at the moment because we struggle to set it up on Zoom. Really, we need to meet with people, have a beer, and talk things through. So as soon as this jolly lockdown's over, we'll be into it.
Right, thanks, Paul. Troy?
I'd like to defer to Arno. He'll be able to describe our setup.
All right, thanks, Troy. Yeah. Kia ora. Yeah, I'm here representing right now the Waipara Arts Cooperative with a K association, Waka. What we're trying to do is we've just sort of started on our journey, and we're trying to set up an arts cooperative with artists in Waitara and in Taranaki to pool resources for marketing and for the welfare of our members, and to also sort of work together and help the community to achieve its goals. So we've just started on the journey, and we're very excited about it. And yeah, we hope to have it all set up within 6 months. That's our current goal. Thank you.
Thanks, Arno. Okay, Chris Batterson.
Yes, I'm Chris. We are still in the stage of establishing our credit union. So I'm a financial advisor. So with all the new compliances this year, I got stuck. I own a financial advice company. So on the left side, we are trying to establish a credit union because we observe that there's a big gap right now in terms of providing lending, particularly to migrants. So I'm a migrant from Philippines. So banks and lenders are so strict right now that the migrants couldn't apply for a loan. So what we are trying to do here is to have a cooperative that is easily accessible, not only for migrants, but the locals here as well. So I think I need to call Ross in the next few weeks because trying to seek assistance again. So I'm so busy right now because I operate holistic financial services. So, and also I'm trying to find a like another person who will take care of all the requirements like the constitution and registration in the societies and charities.
Oh, David's on the line, Chris, so maybe we can tap it.
All right.
To Francisca and Kai.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hello. Hi, everybody. So we are one Italian and one Maori. We are partners and we live on the Chatham Islands. We've been here 7 years, and it's been now nearly 3 years that we started a journey producing Chatham Island freeze-dried honey. which is taken then to set up an apiary, which is our own place where we take tourists on the Chathams to look at our beehives. And now we just have to grow our business, and it's a small community, so would be lovely to have other people involved, people that already produce honey and people that would like to produce honey. So how do we share the profits and how do we grow the industry for the generations to come? That's all the questions that we are trying to answer.
Right.
Thank you.
Eric, I can see you're on mute. If you can unmute and just give us a bit of an intro. He's disappeared. Oh, no, here he is.
I'm just trying to get to the button, sorry. So I work with Auckland Council and manage some film studios. I have my own private business that we've been managing for many years. We also work with a charitable trust to make places for people that can't normally get into such things, digital media school down in Hawke's Bay. So it's focused around less privileged people that don't necessarily always get the opportunities that others do. It's 70% Wahine, so female, and 95% Māori, and is quite a game changer in that area. In terms of co-ops, in another life in the early 90s, I was managing a facility in Atlanta. We invited a client to come in and stay for free. We got about $2.5 to $3 million business out of that client. But the other thing happened is all the other people that client needed to use that didn't have the service. So any other services they needed, they started to bring those other people into the circle of that area and within that set of buildings. So it kind of formed a co-op of its own based on delivery. So, yep. So that would be some of my past.
Great. Thanks for that, Eric. Tan, if you're there, I can. Oh, there you are. So it'd be good to. I think it'd be good for you to speak about what you've been doing, because Tan's a lot further down the line than some of the rest of you. Oh, we can't hear you, Tan. You're mute.
On mute?
Yeah, we can hear
All
you
good?
now.
It is. Kia ora, tēnā katoa. I'm Tan, CEO and co-founder of TrueStock. Here it is. We are very new, although we've been going behind the scenes for quite a while. So we are a New Zealand cooperative. It's a New Zealand stock image library representing a diverse and multicultural and authentic New Zealand. So for other businesses to use these images. And all our photographers who are our contributing photographers that submit photos to us, they're actually our co-owners and they're shareholders, because we love the format, we love the cooperative idea. I've done quite a bit of work for Fonterra in the past, and I've seen the dairy farmers, become co-owners, and we thought that model fits really nicely with our local content creators who basically become shareholders. So we've been live for about a month now, but behind the scenes we've been working on the paperwork, on getting all the constitution written, drafted. As 3 directors, and one of our directors has a legal background, so that's immensely helped actually draft a lot of the legal paperwork, because I think as a startup that's one major challenging thing. Of course, Roz has helped out along the way, but there's just certain things that you have to really understand in order to draft a constitution, in order to write, proper paperwork. And I think a good lawyer there really helps. But that's us. Looking forward to meeting all of you in person when COVID lifts. But yeah, it's truestock.co.nz. Check us out and flick me an email about any queries you guys have through Roz. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Joe Allen, can't see you. Where have you disappeared to?
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Joella Maho. I am the co-founder and director of a entrepreneur support organisation here in Tauranga Moana, in the Bay of Plenty. I have been involved with cooperatives for about the last 4 years because of the demand that's walking through our door from local people and not so local people as well, looking for support to set up cooperatives. So they range from everything from housing to food to a light rail cooperative to performing arts. At the other end of the scale, a dog walking who are forming a cooperative, and kind of a bit of a meta. We've got a kind of cooperative forming of entrepreneur support organisations across New Zealand, which obviously can be beneficial to everybody. In terms of cooperation, our organisation runs a co-working space, so we have around 130 people in a cooperative facility in Tauranga, in the centre of the city, working with a co-op incubator in the United States. They've just launched a new program, accelerator program, looking to bring here to New Zealand. Also involved in a number of platform cooperatives, providing digital services and kind of a bit techie, distributed ledger and blockchain technology, which takes cooperatives to a whole nother level with their own currency even. So yeah, I'm kind of donkey deep in cooperative stuff to benefit communities and share the benefits. Look forward to meeting you all.
Thanks, Jo. And I think what's quite interesting in terms of where you're located, there might be a number of you on the coast there that potentially could do some collaboration work together. So
beautiful.
Encourage that. Raywin, where are you?
I'm here. Kia ora koutou, Raywin Hipe tōku ingoa. This is my sister Rose. Kia ora. We're from the far north, from Ngāpuhi.
Kia ora.
And we're working on a cooperative model, trying to link up a lot of small whenua block owners and a host of products, but primarily doing small market gardening and some tropicals, and really just trying to get a lot of the blocks more active. We actually have the markets lined up. What we don't have is the produce coming through, and we don't have the cooperative constitution in place. So we're hoping to get some ideas and support around what's a good constitution and what's a good co-op model. So that's us, and our cooperative is Kaya Nuku Māori Organics.
Great, thank you so much. Megan?
Kia ora everyone, my name is Megan Fitzgerald. I'm based down in the South Island. I don't know how many people are actually, Canterbury. So I'm on the board of directors for a sheep milk cooperative. It's obviously, we're looking at connecting sheep milk farmers. I personally have a cooperative background at Lincoln University, looking at smallholder vegetables in Malawi. So I've done cooperatives internationally and domestically. The sheep milk cooperative, we're in our very beginning stages. And I think our challenge at the moment is we've got the suppliers there. We're negotiating with the markets. We've got our processes lined up. It's actually about that legality around it. So is there an interim phase we can go for, because our constitution is going to be quite complex around like supply holdings. Can we in the meantime move forward without actually having to have a formalized constitution? So I guess that's what I'm here for today, but also very interested to hear what everyone else is talking about. It's super cool industry to be involved in.
That's awesome, thank you for that. And I think what's interesting is Tan's just offered up the process they're going through. So they've obviously done a two-step process, so that might be relevant for you, Megan. Tim, I can see Tim somewhere out there. No, Tim Finlay? Okay,
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
move.
Good morning, Marina. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Tim.
Okay. Yeah, so Tim Finlay, I'm the MD at Remarket. Remarket are involved in end-to-end computer services. So we roll in newer computers and then we roll out the old stuff. And what can be reused is reused, and what can't be reused is recycled. So I've been part of the extended producer responsibility group, looking at setting up a product stewardship organisation for the funding of end-of-life computer equipment or electronics in the broader terms. So I presented to the government last year the possibility to manage the product stewardship organisation through a charitable co-op. That was poo-pooed, but I think it was just a matter of timing. The government's not quite there yet, ready to set up a construct for the product stewardship organisation in New Zealand, but I do think a cooperative charity would be the better way to go. So we're just continuing to champion that, and so at some stage we'll be engaging. We need help to figure out what that looks like, and also potentially getting Rosin to speak with some of the government entities that will be involved in getting that across the line.
Great. I'm really excited by that. I think it's a really good story to tell. Now I've seen Tom Dorman's just joined us. Tom, we're just doing a round table quick intro of who we are and what our business is.
Okay, cool. Sorry to be tardy, guys.
You there, Tom? No, I was just going to say, would you like to do a quick intro of the business and what you're doing, where you're at in the life cycle? Literally, everyone's doing a 1 to 2 minute.
Oh, okay, yeah. Right, cool. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm sort of taking a bit of a step back from my other business earlier this year, and then this year I'm sort of starting back into health coaching, sort of one-on-one with clients, but then I'm also going to be taking on other trainers and sort of coaching people in the methods that I use as well. But the bigger goal is to open up a clinic in Wellington, and then but also having that as being a multi-practice, so looking at sort of what I do as a corrective exercise coach and holistic health coach, but also working in with physiotherapists, massage therapists, nutritionists, potentially naturopaths, but then also looking at a group fitness option as well. So sort of having a gym there with some different modalities like yoga, as well as some Les Mills classes, and then also having a grocer and a cafe in there as well, an organic grocer with an organic cafe. So yeah, sort of the idea of the co-op really appeals to me, just sort of coming from a corporate background, where my other business is more of a, we sort of run from a board level, typical standard corporation, and but I'm sort of wanting this to be a collaborative experience, and, really getting people invested in it and driving forward with more of the group vision as a whole. So that's sort of the reason I'm interested.
I'm on an online meeting.
Thanks for that, Tom. That's an awesome intro. Is that everyone? Have all the businesses had an opportunity to speak about what they're doing? I think so. Well, it's really neat, and I'm to hear all of you, and it's fantastic that David is here from the company's office. What I'm hearing is we're talking about employee-owned co-ops, we're talking about consumer-owned, we're talking about supplier-owned. So you've got all the gambit and you've also got all the industries. So it's really exciting to hear, you know, primary sector, health, you name it, it's fantastic. So on that note, what I think we will do now is I'll hand over to Lindsay to run through. He's got a few slides that he's offered to share with you, and I'm on slide duty. So hopefully you can see that. That come up on your screens?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so Lindsay, do you want to just run us through your experience to date?
Yep. So you see the New Zealand Truffle Association logo there. That's sort of one part of our branding that we've already got organised, but everything else is at a very early stage. So based on what people have been saying, it sounds like some people are sort of struggling to get off the ground with their constitutions and sort of working out where to start. I've got a legal background, so it's a bit easier for me, but I'll just try and talk you through the process that I went through starting out from scratch with no co-op experience or background. So the first thing I looked at was the New Zealand Companies Office website, because on there you will see, if you do a company search and click on search entity type, if you search for New Zealand cooperative companies, you'll find 122 of them at the moment. The Constitution is public document. So what I did was I went through all of those 122 current New Zealand cooperative companies, and I looked for the ones that were in our industry sector, so horticulture based, and I also looked for ones which seemed to be particularly relevant to our model that we wanted to adopt. The thing to focus on if you're going through that exercise is looking at the shareholding arrangements. That's usually the beginning parts of the Constitution. They're not all the same format, but a lot of them will have the more boring and routine and repetitive stuff at the end. So really the meat of it is in the very first part. I picked out from that the ones that I thought were particularly relevant, and we're going to probably get bits of our Constitution from various other ones. It looks like the lawyers that draw these up do the same thing as well. The big law firms are copying each other, so don't be daunted. That's the same process that a lawyer will go through if you employ them. I also looked at the Financial Markets Authority website, because that's you'll find if you're taking money from your members, you wouldn't be regulated, you'll fall under that. So you will see various provisions in there that will cover you. Most of you will fall under some exemptions, so you'll have to do a very minimal reporting to your members and each year. Now I also looked at overseas online resources. So I found the Australian state resources were the most useful, at least in the horticulture area. There's some really good business plan templates and some marketing plan templates, and quite a lot of information. You have to be a little bit careful with Australia though, because their law is different. Their financial regulatory system is sort of in line with New Zealand, but it is different. So you can't really copy your constitution or legal documents from anything you find in Australia. I also found that the MBIE website has got really good guides on setting up a business and setting up an online business. So for New Zealand, it's a really good place to start. I spoke to a couple of New Zealand co-ops that Ros referred me to, and they were really helpful. So I talked to the CEO of New Zealand Hops, and I also spoke to the quite a number of people from Walnuts New Zealand, including a lady who had educated herself and had written their constitution with some backup from a lawyer. It was really good to talk to them because they could tell me what a co-op actually looks like when it's operating. They told me about pitfalls we could avoid, and I just found it really, really useful to be able to be given some idea of priorities and such by just speaking to people who've already done it. There are no textbooks or anything on co-ops that I could find relating specifically to New Zealand. I don't think there's any legal templates out there for drawing up documents. So we basically concluded we have to do everything from scratch, which is unfortunate. And the reason for that is that every single co-op that I looked at had completely different rules, and obviously driven by the different business requirements. So even amongst the group here today, it's clear that everybody's coming at it from a different angle. So unfortunately, that means the legal part of the whole process is quite complicated. There are specialist lawyers that do this kind of work. Two names keep coming up all the time, which is Alistair Herkis from Finland, Wellington, and Joanna Lim, who works for a law firm in Christchurch. They are quite expensive. We concluded we didn't have enough funding to pay specialised lawyers to draw up all of our documents. What we're thinking of doing at the moment, and the decision's not yet made, is that we will draft up our constitution based on ones that I've found online, a brief cooperative agreement, which simply in our case will just say that the truffle growers have agreed to cooperate to market their products and to get good prices and ensure that quality is kept up, and basically ensure that the New Zealand truffle industry can grow as it ought to have done. And the final thing we're going to do is supply agreements, which this is the main agreement, governs the commercial relationship between the members of the co-op and the co-op company. The first place to start, if you're looking at this process, Cooperative Companies Act 1996, it's a pretty small piece of legislation that's got the specific requirements of New Zealand law as they relate to co-ops in the first 20 or 30 paragraphs of that law. So it's available online. It's worth having a look just to see what the thrust of the New Zealand government's legislation on co-ops is all about. Lawyers you will probably need for compliance advice. So compliance with the Financial Markets Conduct Act, if you're a larger co-op, that's got reporting requirements and things. Not something that I would do myself, to be honest. I think it's quite a specialised area. The other compliance issue, which is specifically relating to co-ops, is the annual resolution that directors have got to make once the co-op's operating, to say that the co-op is operating properly as a cooperative under the Cooperative Companies Act. So you need to draft up a little statement resolution, which is made each year, which confirms that and is signed by all the directors. Intellectual property and branding, obviously really important. That's the area I spent most of my legal career in, that trademarks branding sort of area. My one piece of advice is don't go and spend a lot of money on a branding agency.
You're angry. Could your key worker, could I meet you and your key worker wherever you are?
Whoever's got their speakerphone on, could you mute?
Yeah. Whereabouts?
Yeah, so don't go and spend a lot of money on a branding agency, at least in the early stages. What they're offering is not particularly good value for money. Sure, you will need a trademark and you need a trading name, and it's worth putting some thought into choosing it, but spending a lot of money on that is should be a very low priority when you're starting off. You need to identify your legal risks. You probably don't know what they are if you're not lawyers, but you can sort of work out broadly where the areas of risk might lie. So that would be your co-op company directors' liabilities, and the Institute of Directors website can help you with that. There will be issues with whether you've set up the company properly, and even a non-specialised lawyer can help you with that. There will be issues about whether your supply contracts are adequate and binding. Again, you can probably for yourselves get some picture from looking at other ones available on the internet, just where your issues might lie. I think it is important to try and work out where your risk areas will be before you get too far down the track. You will need to hire accountants. We haven't done that yet. The accountant's main purpose, as far as we're concerned, will be to advise us on tax. So there is a somewhat favourable tax treatment for co-ops in New Zealand, and you need to make sure that you will your co-op will qualify for those benefits. Now we have 17 members at the moment. They're spread all over New Zealand. They didn't know each other before the co-op, so it's been a little bit tricky running Zoom meetings, which we have about every 2 or 3 weeks, because some speak all the time, some don't speak up, and it's quite tricky to get a consensus. So what I've tended to do with that is to follow up really quickly with notes, bit of guesswork about what we've decided sometimes, because we don't follow a particular agenda, and then ask the members to comment in an email or something as a follow-up, and people sometimes are a lot more comfortable with that. Now, we've set up a working group as well, which is a smaller group of growers, 5 of them, who are probably going to be the provisional directors of our co-op company. So they're the ones that are really driving things, and I'm working quite closely with them, and we put out proposals to the other co-op members just for them to take a look at and hopefully give us approval to continue with those. So our progress to date, which is the next slide, Ross, we have already decided what products we're going to be selling, more or less how we're going to do that. We've decided we're going to focus on the domestic market to start off with. All of these decisions trying to help us focus down on what our business scope is going to be before we set up the co-op structure. So we still have to make the structure as flexible as we can, because we think new products will come in and we're pretty sure we won't get it right the first time. But we're now at a stage where we're working on a marketing plan. We're looking at setting up an online shop, and the business plan is sort of in the works, but particularly for us as a sort of first proper commercial venture in the whole truffle area, it's really, really hard to write a business plan. Our next steps will be to draft up the various documents, which I'll be doing, discuss them and get them approved by the co-op members, approval of the provisional directors of the cooperative company, get the co-op members to sign up, at which point we've got to give them a disclosure document to acknowledge that they've made a contribution and they may not get it back. And the truffle season starts next autumn, so we're hoping to kick things off by then. I think for time frame, realistically, at least for us and from speaking to the other horticultural co-ops, 6 months is probably pushing it. A year is probably the amount of time you'll likely need to fully discuss your co-op and get it set up and running. but remains to be seen. But anyway, like I say, we're at quite an early stage, so we're still very much feeling our way. Okay, that's about it, I think.
That's fantastic, Lindsay. I think you've given us a really good overview of everything that's involved in the process, because it's, as you say, it's not a, you know, a quick fix. The whole process, like you talked about the branding, and just remember, all of you, if you are using the Co-op Companies Act, you can actually call yourself a cooperative, and I think it's the same for the Industrial and Provident Society. David's nodding, so that's a good sign. For those of you who've joined us, David Jocelyn is from the company's office, so make sure you tap into his knowledge. I think the comment about using the New Zealand Companies Office website, that's and leveraging the constitutions, absolutely, that's what we would strongly recommend, looking in terms of the most similar arrangements in terms of the shareholding structure. The thing that everyone needs to remember is keep it simple, and I think that's what Lindsay was alluding to, and also the FMA requirements, which is the Financial Markets Authority. So there's opportunities to leverage, as Lindsay pointed out, around tax. The Australian state resources, absolutely, they've put a lot of money towards investing in the in cooperatives, and so they've got a lot more resources, but obviously do be mindful about the relevance to the New Zealand market. So I think really appreciate that. That was fantastic. So I just let's move on to the next part. So I had included just making some comment about the Co-op Companies Act, sorry, the Small Co-ops Exemption Scheme. So a lot of you will be able to leverage that, and that means that you actually are able to apply for certain dispensations. So you don't have to do a full prospectus if you are getting less than $5,000 off your members for them to become a member. And there's some other things that will be relevant to you. So if your income is under $2 million, then you can actually also be part of that Small Co-ops Exemption Scheme. Cooperative Business New Zealand is actually just lobbying the FMA with regards to that scheme. So it's really important for you in your startup phase that we make sure that there's a continuation of that being utilised for you. So I won't go into anything further on that. I think it would be really good for, actually, David, you might just want to jump in here, given what you've heard from Lindsay, and also where all of the audience is at on their stage of the journey.
Well, thanks, Ros, and first of all, thank you to the association for inviting me to the to this forum, and I'd just like to say that really Lindsay has set out what I think is you know, a really good and valuable process, if you like, or he's documented the steps that you should be looking at taking if you're embarking on the cooperative journey. And it's really what I would covered things that our office would say to people that are looking at establishing a co-op. I might just take a quick step back and just maybe talk a little bit about what our office does, and just in terms of the company's office. We really are the office you come to when you're looking to register your cooperative business to get body corporate status. And so our office runs a large number of business registers, and so primarily ones that you would possibly be dealing with are other cooperative companies or companies register. There's also industrial and provident societies, credit unions, building societies, industrial and provident societies, I think I mentioned, incorporated societies. So a lot of structures that have application to the cooperative model. And so you would come to our office when you have put together or decided really what type of body corporate structure you want to operate your cooperative. And so Lindsay was, mentioned searching the companies register to identify cooperative companies that are registered. So you can look at their constitutions to see how, or to put together a governance document for your organisation. But you can also look at the other registers and documents, for instance, for industrial and provident societies, for incorporated societies, for credit unions and building societies, friendly societies. They're all public registers that have documents like constitutions and rules that these organisations must provide to our office. And I think Lindsay also talked very importantly about getting professional advice as well. And the old saying is it's best to have a lawyer when you don't actually need one. When you're actually looking at avoiding pitfalls, and as Lindsay indicated, doing a lot of research in advance and actually preparing your constitution based on the information you can locate for yourself will save you a lot of money dealing with lawyers and in particular. So I think that was very clearly stated. And so having said that, I just think what Lindsay had said there is really valuable information for you guys starting on the journey to develop a cooperative enterprise. So Ros, actually, what was your question?
Oh no, I think that's really helpful. What I was going to say is I can see Francesca's got a question, but I think it was directed at Lindsay. So what I'd like to do is open up the floor to all of you, and if you've got questions for Lindsay or specifically for David, if you can just raise your hand and we'll just go around the room. So I'll start with Francesca.
Yes, thank you. It was really interesting to listen Lindsay's talking, and I love truffles, and I have 20 plants myself on the Chatham Islands because I invited a producer to an event a couple of years ago, and so after that we all bought probably 20 plants each, and now we are waiting for them to grow. The question is why should I join a co-op? Because this is the same question will be made by the people on the island to join the honey co-op. So what is the answer? What are the answers from you and anyone else if they have any good answers that to give? Thank you.
Well, our motivating factor for the truffle industry is that it's extremely disjointed. So the growers are basically competing against each other. There's very few places to sell the product in New Zealand, just a few restaurants and maybe online or sort of at the farm gate. We thought that if we could get the growers together, they would be in a position to give a continuous supply to larger customers, and there wouldn't be the need for everyone to be marketing and competing against each other on price. We also thought that having a single national online shop for all the products would be a really, really good way of getting the industry better known rather than everybody trying to do it themselves. Basically, it's a matter of scale and resources. Most of our growers are very small. There's going to be some huge truffle production coming online in about 5 or 10 years' time, because it takes a while, as you'd know. But those growers probably will go on their own, but everybody else is going to be left fighting amongst themselves for the small number of customers that we have. So it makes sense in every way, really, for us.
That's great. Thanks, Lindsay. I think Arno's got a question there.
Yeah, sorry, my mic was off. My question is, you know, I'm very keen on cooperatives, and I think they're a model for the future. And I believe that there's a reason why cooperatives are growing around the world, the number of them and the number of people involved. And what I'd like to see is, or I'd like to hear from Cooperatives New Zealand is, you know, can the Companies Office do more to help this in this stage of setting up these cooperatives in terms of giving some advice or giving some guides that can really help cooperatives get going? And also, does the Cooperatives New Zealand have sort of a strategy about, you know, new laws that might come in place that might help this whole process? You know, what can the government can do to make it a bit easier, because, you know, we're all struggling and we do struggle, the legal, especially that legal side.
Yeah.
It'd be good if we had some sort of better advice and guidance, you know, directly from the government or someone. I'm not sure how it all works, but yeah, that's what I wanted to raise.
So there's a number of things to say, and I'll hand over to David in a moment. So this lovely document, which most of you have received, is quite old and dated. And this is basically, Anna, you'll be getting this as part of joining up as a provisional member. It basically is a bit of a step-by-step guide in terms of things you need to be thinking about, the legislation that you're operating under. But at the moment, this is quite out of date. So I'm currently working with David and the team at the Companies Office to revise that, and incorporated in that will be a constitution template. But as you have all heard, it's really challenging in terms of all of you are doing different things. The construct's not going to be the same. And so at the moment, we're only proposing to do the constitution based on the Co-op Companies Act, because that's where the majority of you will register under. Obviously, Chris is talking about setting up a credit union, which is different again, but some of the same questions will still need to be raised. So I know that's one part. The other part is that we're doing a lot of lobbying in terms of Wellington. In Australia, there's been a huge amount of money spent on these businesses, and yes, Tom, you can get a copy of the booklet. Yeah, so there's been a lot of money spent in Australia, even though they only generate 1.5% of GDP by revenue, whereas here in New Zealand, it's 18% of GDP by revenue. For whatever reason, and David might be able to speak to this, the government and the economists really don't value the model here, which is quite concerning. So what I've been spending a lot of time doing is raising your profile to raise the understanding of the importance of the business model here in New Zealand, and to make sure that there is more funding put towards your startup. So we're having a lot of really good traction, because I've just completed that PwC report that was circulated out to all of you in advance of this meeting. And that's actually opening up a lot of doors, and conversations are being had. So a couple of weeks ago, we got in front of the Primary Production Select Committee. So that just hopefully will give you a sense that there's work being done. There's a recognition that there's not enough there to support you. And the challenge is, as you say, the cost for legal support. Yes, you absolutely need to make sure you're speaking to those professional advisors, but the cost of it shouldn't be as prohibitive as it is now. I see that as quite a big roadblock for you, whereas other business models, that challenge is not quite at the same size and scale. So I'll hand over to David, because he'll probably be able to add some more to this, and we'll sign him up for some more work.
Oh, thanks, Ros. Just what I wanted to say, I guess in relation to the point Arno was about legal advice, and I'm a solicitor in the Companies Office in Auckland, and I'm not involved in any of the policy work that the MB, which the Companies Office sits under, does. That's all, most of the policy work that Ros referred to is done in Wellington to bring about legislative change and refinements of legislation. Though having said that, I am aware of and do have input into discussion documents, etc. But in terms of I guess me as a lawyer for the Companies Office providing you or the public with advice, I'm actually not permitted to do that. I have a practicing certificate, which limits me to only providing advice to my employer, who is the Registrar of Companies and Registrar of Industrial and Provident Societies, all the different registrars that sit within the company's office. So I'm actually prohibited by the, I guess, the Law Society from being able to give you any legal advice, for your business. I can only give legal advice to my employer. So that's the reason why, if you like, I can't, or the company's office can't give you specific legal advice in relation to running your business or setting up your cooperative. And I think Lindsay, going back to Lindsay's presentation, this issue of you having to try and work out what's the best structure for what I want to do. And I mean, you're the experts in your type of business. And so therefore, what you're trying to do is apply or find the legislative model that allows you to progress your business, your cooperative, in the best way for you and your members. And so, for instance, what the company's office can offer, and Lindsay really did say this about, we can give you direction in terms of if you wanted to register a cooperative company. As Lindsay's said, we would direct you to have a look at other registered cooperative company constitutions, or if it was an industrial and providence society, we'd say, well, go and have a look at the particular area that you're wanting to operate in, see if there's other entities that are already registered, and have a look at their governing documents to educate yourself, and then bring, develop your own constitutional document, for instance. And at that point, then you can go and get legal advice that because you've done all that groundwork, you're not going to be starting right at the beginning with your lawyer. You're going to be much more informed, and the lawyer will have to do less. Will do less work for you because you're already done a lot of the groundwork for them, and so they'll give you some guidance, or perhaps get you to tweak some provisions, add some things in, but you will have built up documents yourself.
I was just going to say, also it'll make sure that you ask the right questions.
Yes.
That would pretty good.
I think Roz talked about on the MB site just some broad guides for different types of businesses. Utilizing that information as well.
Yeah, so this document won't be available probably until the new year. But for those of you, I'm pretty sure all of you've got it, and obviously Tom's identified he hasn't, and Arno, you will get sent it. But yeah, there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and we're very mindful of trying to do more to simplify the process. So I'm just going to move over to Megan. You've got your hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you. I guess you've kind of been touching a bit on it, and all of you, but I'm interested, what documents did you have aligned before you sought legal advice, or when you engaged it, and who's the first legal professional you think is the best to engage?
Lindsay, do you want to speak to that?
Wow. It's a little bit tricky to say because, I'm from a legal background myself. I would think that you can find a supplier agreement. So for your milk, certainly for you, if you're looking at, there's plenty of dairy cooperatives in New Zealand. Fonterra obviously is not the model you want to copy because it's far too complicated. But Westland Dairy Co-op, which has been sold, but that was a co-op which you might want to look at. I know that the New Zealand Walnuts looked at their constitution and found it really useful. So I'd look at that. I would, before you talk to a lawyer, have a really good idea of who's going to run your co-op company, what sort of regulation you're going to have of those people, so how they have an interface with the producers, so how that's all controlled. You really need to have all of your business model mapped out. So to some extent you'll be able to write the constitution, but if you at least can tell your lawyer this is how we plan to structure the company, it'll make life a lot easier for them and therefore cheaper. So you could be looking at $700 an hour for the specialist lawyers. I've heard from some other co-ops that they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, but not necessarily specifically on setting up the co-op. It's to do with the compliance and other things. But yeah, the other thing is that when you're choosing a lawyer, you've got to be quite careful. Since there's only 122 co-ops being set up or current in New Zealand, not many lawyers have got any skills in this area. I mean, I was kind of on the edge of that with the work that I used to do, but I'm starting totally from scratch. So you don't want to be paying a lawyer at between $400 and $700 an hour to be learning and doing the same thing you can be doing yourself, which is reading up other people's constitutions and trotting something out. They'll make it look pretty, but you're paying all the way. They won't like it if you come in with a half-done co-op, but if you find the right one, they will have enough skills to review it and say, well, you've gone really wrong here. This is going to be a problem later on because your shareholders are going to get into conflict or whatever the issues are. And that's where the real value is added. If you're using a lawyer to do your day-to-day stuff, you're going to wind up spending a fortune.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, Megan, in terms of what Lindsay's saying, so this is where being a member with us is really important. You should have a look to see who our members are and identify who you actually want to engage with. And that's where we can actually do those introductions. So as Lindsay was talking to, and I've done a lot of this with TAN as well with True Stock, is we will give you those introductions and just remember those cooperative principles around collaboration. It is amazing how much time you will get from some of those senior leaders who really want to make you succeed and support you on your journey. So don't be shy to say, is there someone I could speak to in Fonterra per se? It might not be Miles Hurrell, but there'll be someone within that organisation who'll be prepared to talk to you. You know, you're not directly in competition. And even if you are directly in competition, quite often people will be prepared to help. So that will reduce the effort. In terms of the specialists, we've got Buttle Finlay and Anderson Lloyd as corporate associate members with us. So those are two lawyers. Your real challenge is to make sure that you are speaking to lawyers who've got specialist subject matter knowledge around cooperatives, because quite often if you approach anyone, more often than not, they won't understand cooperatives as a business model, and they will end up pushing you towards partnership or a trust or an association. And if that's not what you're trying to achieve, you're not going to get the outcome that you're looking for. So, and I know Lindsay mentioned Joanna Lim, who's with Simpson Grierson down in Christchurch. But yeah, they charge for every 6 minutes and they cost a fortune. So the more we can help you, I can't give you legal or financial advice, but I can give you introductions to those people who might be able to help you on that journey. Now, I'm just mindful. Francesca, you've got another question I can see. Francesca, are you there? Otherwise, I'll hand over.
Yeah, so basically, this is a question that I asked you as well when we had our first meeting, is do you think we are on the right journey for co-op? Because, I mean, it's idealistically, so the reason why I've started it is basically because I found myself in a situation where everybody had already, on the Chathams that there is a quota system for fishing and for farming. So I found myself as a young generation and wanting to do something for myself, and and not able to enter in other systems because they were locked, basically, so there was no access. And so I said, all right, I will create my own system. But how long is going to take me if I go by myself? Basically, it's going to take me 30 years. So if I want to go faster, I will I have to ask others for help. And so how do you ask others that don't really need to grow because they don't have that urgency? They already have their probably finances established. So how do you get those players to join you? How do you attract them with? And so someone just mentioned, oh, you need a co-op. So just trusting these person's advice, I just went with this name. But are there other models maybe that I'm not considering and would be more suitable for me? So this is, who can I make this question? Because maybe it's like when you go for a doctor for you got a issue and they say, well, you've come to the wrong doctor, you have to go to someone else. So is co-op the model for me, for what I'm trying to achieve? Who do I have a conversation about that? That's basically my
I might just ask Lindsay to speak to that first, given his experience, and if there's anyone else who wants to provide comment to Francesca, then we've got a wave of hand down here from Joe as well.
Okay, for the co-op, I guess what drives it is, do you have a number of producers that want to get the benefits of a bigger scale? If that's the case, then it helps everybody to work cooperatively, but there's no point setting up a co-op if you're going to have sort of one principal person or company or producer driving it, because then you might as well just set up a normal business. So I think the model you choose is driven by the people and the circumstances. So, you know, if you have got a whole lot of small honey producers on the Chathams, and they want to get together and maybe start sending it off to New Zealand and selling and getting into supermarkets, for example, the only way to do that will be to cooperate. And for that purpose, a cooperative is the best step, I would think.
Okay. Yeah, that's the situation. That's I think I can do better for all these little producers that at the moment they're only doing it as a hobby, I can make it as a business for myself, and I have already, and I can give them a better value for the honey, but they have to change a little bit their mindset or the location of their hives. So that's my situation, basically.
I'll get Jo to make a comment as well here, Francesca, because she's got a lot of experience with this with startups. So Jo, do you want to add to that?
Sure. Yes. Hi, Francesca. It's awesome that you're working to include your community as well, and that's really what I wanted to say. It is a time-consuming business to set up a cooperative because it's all about the relationships, right? And it's all about mutual benefit. So we have all kinds of startups walking through our door, and most of them are limited liability companies. And it's very simple because I'm making the decisions. It's my company. I'm making decisions. There's a hierarchy, and I'm at the top of it, and this is how it's going to work, right? With a cooperative, obviously, you've got to have community buy-in to all of those decisions. So it does take a long while to establish, and that's one of the critical issues for the government, is to understand that actually, you know, the people that are interested in cooperatives are interested in mutual benefit, and that there is a whole startup period that is unlike any other kind of business, which requires a lot of work, which at this point is completely unfunded in any way, shape or form. However, startups that start up as cooperatives last much longer than startups that start as limited liability companies. So you put the work in, you get the long-term gain. It's a long-term win for the people involved and for New Zealand. So actually investing in helping cooperatives to set up and help fund some of those conversations, and while every cooperative is different, providing some of those template documents is going to be the thing that really activates the cooperative model and makes it worth, 40% of the revenue of New Zealand rather than 19% of the revenue of New Zealand. But I'd encourage you to persist with it, because the long-term gain is worth it. I mean, you can see it from the 19% that is contributing to the economy right now, right? Long-standing businesses. Happy to help and have a conversation with you. The community building part of it, which Lindsay's done, but touched on quite lightly, is, I think, the biggest part of it. Actually being able to work out what your decision-making process is, and signaling when a decision is made by the group is an important structure to put in place in all of your meetings. And there are a number of models that you can use that make it kind of more templated how you're going to go about that, so that everybody knows, somebody's putting up a proposal, some people are putting up suggestions or blockers to that proposal, how you work through that process, and then what the final decision-making framework actually looks like, how many people you need to actually be in that decision-making process, and what does no comment actually mean. If you can establish, with people that aren't necessarily able to turn up to all the meetings, so if you don't comment on a proposal, does that mean that you are agreeing with it, or that you have a problem and you don't know how to actually contribute? Let's work that out so that we know, if we don't hear from you, what that means and we know the next steps to take. It's tikanga, right? Like, it's literally it's a communal process, and understanding what the signals are is a key part of it. I'm happy to help. Please do reach out. My email address is in my profile.
That's awesome, Joe. I couldn't have answered it any better, so I don't need to add anything to that. Is there any, Joe, you had your hand up already. Was it to have that conversation, or is there something else that you wanted to add?
It was really to have that conversation, but I do, like Ros, I know you're banging the drum with the government, literally, and it's great to have David in the room to see you doing that, right? Yeah, I think there is an opportunity with a group like this that Ros has put together to actually support Ros and say, look, we are out here, right? There is demand for help from MB, NZTE, all of those people that have funding to help businesses establish, to actually support this model. So the more people that can get in behind Ros and go, there's a big group of us here and we represent hundreds and potentially thousands of people that are looking to start a cooperative model, the more likely we are to get that support from the public service initially. If not the political will to do it, at least the public service have to supply, because we're a democratic country, right? So if there is something that the people need, then the public service are beholden to deliver in some way, shape or form. So yeah, I'd encourage you all to stay connected with Ros. I don't know whether there's something here that we could create a monthly meeting or something, just to share really what's going on in our different co-ops, because there's so many different forms. It's a suggestion.
No, that's great. I really like that, and we'll take that on board. So I'm just aware that time's coming. Oh, Anna, you've got another question? You there, Anna?
No, that's all right. I'm just making a comment that I think, exactly what Ros was saying about the fact that, it takes such a big effort for community to get together, and maybe that's how maybe the government needs to set up some kind of grant scheme, so whereby if people make application and they have a good enough business case, the government can fund this process, community engagement process, to get these cooperatives off the ground.
Absolutely, and I think the challenge is right now, for whatever reason, co-ops really struggle to get any funding, which is, as I said, is crazy given they do generate such a significant proportion of our GDP. So the more we can bang the drum, the hopefully we are getting there. It's been 2 years of hard slog, and I'm not going anywhere. I reckon I've got another 2 years before I keel over.
Yeah, I'm involved in the Labour Party, so I'm going to try and at the next conference where they talk about policy, to try and put a policy in. If people want to send me some stuff where they think maybe some kinds of policies that might drive it, we could possibly get Labour to promise it for after the next election.
Sounds great, Arno. I'm on your team.
Yeah.
All right. Your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just as far as that funding stuff's concerned. I mean, yeah, with my other business, I mean, we're fortunate enough to get in with NZ Trade and Enterprise as well, with their sort of Fast 700. So I mean, it's so they're sort of looking after us with our export side of things. But as far as like looking into co-ops, I mean, obviously we've got some massive co-ops in New Zealand, as far as the likes of Mitre 10 and obviously Fonterra. So with the lack of support from a government, is it because of a lack of understanding? Because I mean, clearly there's big business there and there's a big opportunity there, or is it the ease of I guess sort of the limited liability setup?
I think it's both. I think it's lack of understanding, because in New Zealand, if you go through secondary school and tertiary education, and even postgrad with the lawyers and accountants, there's very little education about it. It's quite often sort of a throwaway comment about it being an alternative business model. So I've gotten quite stroppy about that, and at the moment we've got an MOU with Massey University to get education incorporated about the business model, because ultimately those individuals are going to end up as ministers, working in ministries, working in David's role, and they will influence. So there's that part of the equation, and the other part is the actual hurdle to actually getting them off the ground. The legislative environment is not super welcoming of these businesses, and then the hurdles, as I say, in terms of getting funding. So Tom, your comment about NZTE providing you with funding for export, that might actually be quite something interesting for you in terms of the Chatham Islands and honey, that if you start saying you're looking at exporting back to NZ, then that might be an area where they're willing to look at giving you funding. So the export place is, you're more likely to get funding. The comment that I'd make is the reason why they struggle with the model is because you share and distribute the profits back to your members, as opposed to the profits being retained by the mothership, being the cooperative. And so from a banking investment perspective, these businesses don't look as profitable as a corporate, but it's because the way that you do manage your profits is done in a very different way. And so the big part is the education piece, and that's a work in progress. It's not a quick fix. It's a 10, 15, 20-year program of significant change. And if you look at us internationally, in the UK, they have a Minister for Cooperatives sitting in government. In Canada, they have a whole lot of education for ministers and ministries. In Australia, they've put $15 million towards organisations like yourselves. And here in New Zealand, it's pretty much a big fat zero. So we are running those organisations, brands that I put up, they basically are funding what you're doing right now and the work that we're doing with ministries. So it's a big ask, given that all of these other business models get a lot more investment and time in terms of time and exposure. So that's probably hopefully give you a sense of where we are in that journey, but I absolutely agree that it's an important. Jo's got her hand up, and I know Jo will have some quite good.
I just wanted to find out, has there been any work done, Ros, around the social benefits of cooperatives, right? So you're absolutely right when you say, you know, NZTE, government in general looks at the balance sheet and go, well, these aren't as profitable. However, they do provide benefits to the group of people that are involved in that cooperative that go above and beyond a normal limited liability business, which saves the government money. So there is actually a trade-off between looking at the balance sheet and reporting GDP in the current way that the government does, right? You know, to meet OECD standards, all of those things, to be involved in the global trading environment. But there are new measurements, right? And part of the lesson of COVID is about community, is about the amount of invisible work that community does that actually supports government when government, you know, can't get there and can't provide. I wonder if it's possible to actually quantify that, you know, from a cooperative perspective.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that there needs to be some research done on that, and it's not an easy exercise. Other countries have done that. So the whole idea of doing that updated PwC report, which Joe's very kindly pointed out to me, for some of you, you're not able to open, is basically to set the scene of this is the tip of the iceberg, but what is the actual impact in terms of the communities, and whether it be environmental, social, employment, profitability, etc., etc. So at the moment, we haven't got any research being undertaken, but that's something that we're looking at trying to get off the ground. Tom, you've got your hand up, and I know you went to speak before. Can you? I'll just let you talk to that, and then Arno.
Yeah, it was really just more of a follow-on, sort of in regards to that education piece and with the funding. Just because obviously, you know, we've got a couple of banking entities in New Zealand that are cooperatives. Obviously, I think TSB is running as cooperative. Or
No,
the co-op
TSB isn't. There's SBS Bank and the Co-op Bank, both cooperative banks, and then obviously you've got the credit unions as well.
Yeah. So as far as kind of, I mean, when you're sort of talking about from a government and from a business perspective, is what lawyers and accountants being taught at university, and it not necessarily because of the way the balance sheets are being written, it doesn't seem as like a profitable idea. But if you are going to look at funding or business loans for setting this stuff up, are you better to go and reach out to a cooperative bank because they know what you're talking about, or do organisations like Kiwi Bank? I mean, you know, as far as kind of the lending stuff is concerned, like how's the
It's definitely beneficial to reach out to those organisations because, as you say, they do understand the business model, so it makes a big difference. The challenge is in terms of positioning around debt to equity because they are obviously driven by the Reserve Bank's requirement. And when you start positioning, it's depending on how they review equity. So if they take member equity, so let's say your shareholders put their money in, if they treat it as debt versus equity, that's where you run into problems. With the cooperative banks, they get the fact that that's actually equity. You know, it's not like a shareholder in the stock market who could just pull the pin out from underneath them. So it's really important that you do approach those organisations as opposed to just the mainstream banks who definitely don't understand the business model. Sorry, Anna, you've got your hand up, and then I'm going to try and wrap this up because I'm aware we're just over time.
It's just a quick comment. I did an MBA at Victoria University, graduated in December 2019, and I was the only one that ever mentioned the word cooperative in the whole MBA course. And when I did, everyone basically was confused about what I was talking about.
Yeah, I think there's still the view that it's mung bean growing hippies, you know, in communes, and it's so not correct when you look at the businesses and brands. And yes, absolutely, there's a place for them supporting, you know, third world countries to actually improve the lives and livelihoods of the individuals. But there's no difference than here. There's a massive opportunity here whether it be for commercial businesses or social outcomes. So what I was going to suggest, just as a follow-on, is if everyone's open to it, I will share all your details. I'll actually just provide a bit of a table in terms of your intros and your businesses, who's doing what, and then enable you to actually work together to reach out to each other. Obviously, we're always here. So as I said, if you want to have a look online and see who else you want to engage with from our community, I'm happy to facilitate that. And the suggestion to catch up again on a monthly basis, it might be more likely quarterly, because I know that these things take time, and this is quite a big time commitment. But if all of you want to actually do something informally out of this, strongly encourage you to build that network as well. But really, I hope you found this really useful. I found it really useful, and hopefully David will be able to go and take those the feedback and put it back into the right audience there, and we will make sure that this actually becomes a much more useful, user-friendly document for you going forward. So kia kaha, everyone, and thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just in terms of next steps, if you've got any comment or feedback in terms of, this is the first time we've done this, and so it was really good to just see how we went. And as you can see, we sort of just threw it together. A huge thank you to Lindsay. I think your presentation was just awesome. Cool. And really set the bar. And a huge thank you to David as well. I think it's been fantastic. So yeah, take care everyone, and we'll look forward to catching up again soon.